And what's going on, Los Angeles, Bruin Nation, LAFB fam? Your dynamic duo back together again for all of your UCLA football needs. And boy, oh boy, Thriller, it has been a wild, gnarly last few days. The inferno, the tsunami, the tidal wave, the freight train just keeps rolling on here. That is UCLA recruiting. We got 10 new commits to talk about since we had our last episode with Wayne that you did. 29 commitments total. But first things first, brother, before we are live with all of our wonderful friends and community, how have you been these last few days? I was just in San Diego with the family, had a little quality family time before things really kind of ramp up here. Starting Monday, everyone's back to work. All the madness from the new year is over. So had a little quality time. You and I were texting. Great to have Wayne on. We needed his perspective. But how have you been these last few days before we jump into the circus in the best possible way that is UCLA football?
Yeah, man. When you're praying to eat, you can't complain when there's food on your table.
No doubt.
That's kind of the philosophy I've got right now when it comes to UCLA football. My phone time has tripled this week. I know everyone can relate. It feels like every time you pull out your phone, there's a new UCLA commitment. It has been wild, man. I am ecstatic. I am enthused. I am exhausted. But I'm just excited that UCLA football is in a completely different place than when we started the week. So just all great stuff going on with UCLA. And like we were talking about, man, it's the college football playoffs right now, the NFL playoffs. What if our Bruins can take some of these commits and work our way towards a playoff appearance here in the next few years with Mr. Chesney?
Well, Thriller, I mean, you said it best. I mean, look, it's 29 commitments total this week. We're at 10 commitments just these last few days since this show was on live last. We're at number 12 overall in terms of transfer portal rankings. That number, I think, is destined to go up just in terms of sheer quantity. I think when it's all said and done, this is probably going to be a top 5 transfer portal recruiting class moving forward, if not higher, just because of how reliant UCLA is needed to be on it for this 2026 season. And then you keep looking, right, Thriller, live at the college football playoff, and you keep seeing that North Star, that inspiration. And I know fans have been sort of saying, why are you guys bringing up Indiana so much? I mean, this is UCLA. It's a different situation. Look at the situation here of Indiana now 1 win away from being at the absolute pinnacle of the sport, 16-0 overall. Kurt Cignetti going from JMU to Indiana brings 30 to 40 JMU players, and within 2 years, he's 4 quarters away from being the best coach in college football, Indiana being the best team in college football, this being the greatest story in college football. And so how can history potentially repeat itself here? Could UCLA be at the dance in 2027 with an opportunity to win it all? Listen, this is a new day and age in college football where that word alignment keeps coming up. If you have the right level of alignment between university president, athletic director, head football coach, and major donors, things can happen very, very quickly. And it feels like, Thriller, that alignment is really taking place right before our very eyes. This is a level of excitement in UCLA football from a recruiting standpoint we have not quite seen since those early Mora years. And then before that, really, I would say peak Donahue in terms of being able to get the quality of talent that we've been able to get. But let's jump into it, Thriller.
Let's do it.
10 new commits. Let's sort of go player by player. Maybe we start on the defensive side of the ball. I know that's been, we made such a splash with wide receivers the last few days. 4 and counting. It's up to 6 now. We'll get to it there. We got Wayne Knight. We're sort of starting to get stacked here in terms of skill position players, in terms of offensive linemen. The question was, okay, now are we going to flip to the other side of the ball and continue that momentum on the defensive side? Let's start there, Thriller. I know you've got a lot of thoughts on some of these guys, so I'm going to give you the floor, and then we'll go and analyze these guys one by one.
Yeah, it was almost like they were listening to Wayne and I a couple nights ago. It was like, hey, we need to get some tackles in here. We need to get, some linebackers. We would really like that. And lo and behold, they addressed it with 4 players of those caliber of positions right there. And the one that I'll start with I think the common theme that we've seen from Chesney in the early parts is he likes to recruit players from winning environments. Amir Washington coming from Texas Tech, a team that was in the final 8 of college football playoff, a 6'2", 270-pound redshirt sophomore coming from Orange, Texas, 21 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, and 2.5 sacks in a 26 career game cycle. You know what it takes to win there. And you have a guy that can come in right away, maybe get a little bit more playing time with UCLA. He's a little bit slender at that size at 270 pounds, but that's kind of his upside. He's more of a pass rusher, more of a disruptor in there as opposed to just kind of a cog on the defensive tackle side of things. And then he got, his former JMU player that went to Rutgers last year. He wants to do a reunion with Mr. Bob Chesney and Hitchler on the defensive side. Daryl Dahone from Glendale, Pennsylvania, 6'2", 298 pounds. When he started for James Madison 2 years ago, we're talking about 28 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss and a sack in a Duke's uniform. So we wanted defensive tackles. We got defensive tackles with those two guys. And when the linebacker room, I'm very intrigued. Drew Spinogatti, this linebacker we got from James Madison, he's a guy that's followed Chesney from Holy Cross to JMU, now to UCLA. If you want to talk about influence and what this guy means to his players, this guy has followed him across the country and to 3 different universities. Very impressive. He's done 6'1", 230 pounds, 55 tackles. And what I like is he was a constant in the backfield, 7.5 tackles for a loss in the backfield for James Madison last year. And then you apply that to high potential. Anthony Sacca, the linebacker coming from Notre Dame, 6'3", 240 pounds. You want to talk about NFL lineage. His dad was Al Sacca, the Penn State quarterback, late 80s, early 90s. He went to Notre Dame right out of high school. It didn't really work. But talk about another winning environment. I mean, Marcus Freeman coached up for a year, now coming to UCLA. I mean, it's incredible stuff. So from those 2 levels, we wanted it. We got those players immediately. And I don't think we're done with those specific areas, or should not be done. The commitment of the weekend, though, for me, Tao Johnson coming from Utah is massive on so many different fronts. We're talking about 34 career starts. You want guys that have veteran play and have been out there. And, ESPN published this great piece with Kurt Signetti and what he looks for with his guys, because these are mostly 2-3-star guys. He goes production over potential. Those are his kind of philosophies. If you can play a lot of football at any level, odds are you're going to figure it out because you've been in those game situations and can make plays, as opposed to just sitting on the bench and waiting for your turn and never having that game action. Tao Johnson is a guy that started 22 games at safety, 12 at nickel. He allowed the fewest passer rating from any cornerback, DB, you name it, at 4.8% last year at Utah, Madman. 51 tackles and 2 picks. This is a day one starter. There's a lot of times you find some of these guys where you want to plug and play. You want to see what they've got. And we know Tao Johnson, the second he steps on UCLA's campus, we got our starting safety. So it's just a huge, huge win on that front. I got through 5 guys, and I'm not even close to being done, but we'll talk about those 5 guys. What do you think about those dudes? And do you think any of these guys can flash early outside of Johnson for the UCLA Bruins?
Yeah, Thriller. I mean, such a great breakdown there. Tao Johnson, obviously the big prize defensively, no question about it. I mean, look, we saw him up close and personal in that opener against Utah. He was all over the field. And I think, again, that element of versatility, that ability to play safety, that ability to play nickel, because this Hitchler defense is predicated on disguise. You're going to have a lot of different formations defensively pre-snap. You're not going to really know where pressure is coming from, where guys are going to drop back. It really is based on disguise, and camouflage is really Hitchler's philosophy. So someone like Johnson, who really is ultimately versatile. And look, those are 2 wildly different positions, right, Thriller? The fact that you can play nickel and also sort of drop back and play safety. You can be a thumper in the box. You can, sort of be in kind of more of a free safety capacity. That type of versatility you just don't find every day. And again, Thriller, we've talked about this. These themes are coming up, coming from winning programs. Tao Johnson, Kyle Whittingham, Utah, Whittingham, of course, now moves on to Michigan. Opportunity for Tao Johnson to find another home. You're seeing guys that are coming from winning programs that have produced at these winning programs, that have experience at these winning programs, and you can tell that there's an element of continuity that Chesney really wants to bring moving forward. I also love, Thriller, what we've done at the defensive line position. You talked about Amir Washington. That's a huge one for me, because when you think about what Texas Tech was able to accomplish this year, I know things kind of fell short in that quarterfinal. This was a top 4 seed in the college football playoff this year. Texas Tech is a top 5 defense nationally this year with a top 5 defensive line group. And Amir Washington, I mean, it's just was so competitive at Texas Tech in that defensive line room. You knew he was sort of looking for another opportunity. He now comes in to a situation where he can play a lot right away, threaten to start right away. And as you mentioned, he's sort of lined up interior, but really his frame, his quickness is really more conducive to somebody on the edge. So again, you see that element of versatility come in. And then, of course, you bring in Denohe from Rutgers. And again, Greg Schiano at Rutgers, really winning environment.
It's a situation before, it's like it's a match made in heaven, right?
Match made in heaven. So you got some guys that you're bringing in. I think this is just the start, Thriller, from a defensive line perspective. You and I have talked about that magic number being about 15 in terms of offensive and defensive line. We're right around 6-7. So I think that still more than half of the work is going to be done here from a defensive line position moving forward. Really excited about that. And then Saka, Thriller. I mean, when you think about that upside, you're talking about a 4-star kid recruited by Notre Dame. When you're 4-star recruited by Notre Dame and you enter into the transfer portal, again, you have so much optionality at your disposal. The fact that you're resonating with Chesney and UCLA, again, it just speaks to what is being built. I also think, Thriller, not to keep harping on this Indiana point, but I think the success of Indiana has opened up the aperture for a lot of these players where 3, 4, 5 years ago, they would have sort of limited themselves to just 10, 12, 14 schools. Now they've opened up the aperture to say, hey, where can I start? Where can I have playing time? Where can I have continuity? Because it can happen in so many different places. Indiana came out of nowhere. Texas Tech came out of nowhere. Vanderbilt almost made the college football playoff. Anyone can sort of come out of nowhere here. And I think the recipe, Thriller, we're seeing it pretty clearly. You have a coach that really understands player development, understands chemistry and continuity, and then you have that mega donor, and you bring those two things together and the magic is happening. Who played such a prominent role 2 nights ago, Thriller, and leading up to that game? Mark Cuban. And we've got our Mark Cuban and Casey Wasserman. This Chesney-Wasserman equation now hopefully will pay massive dividends, but I think more is going to be done here on the defensive side. A great start because we've got our eye. We've got our eye on the big prize there, Mr. Sahir West. And I know there's been some conversation. Rock and Rent, thanks for joining us yet again. It's going to come down. It's us. It's Ohio State. There's a little bit of Texas A&M chatter we're hearing. But I think ultimately, as long as the NIL package is competitive, if we can bring Sahir West into a Bruin uniform, Thriller, I think it changes the whole dynamic, because how you think about rallying around him and the complementary pieces around him, I think is going to be really, really significant. So an incredible start on the defensive side of the ball, but I believe this is just the beginning, and a lot more is coming here in the days to come.
Yeah, and Be Happy brought up a great point. Scott Taylor also coming back.
Yes.
One of the top recruits of DeShaun Foster's first class as a UCLA head coach, coming from Loyola. He blocked the field goal attempt in the USC game. He was making plays as a linebacker, so you really like the potential there. And, the Indiana thing, people are harping on it. People are saying, hey, you can't compare it. What Indiana has done is they have laid a template for programs like UCLA. You mentioned Vanderbilt and some of these smaller schools that, hey, if development is good enough, you can look any team in the eye and you'll have a shot. How many 4 or 5 stars were on that Oregon team last night that got blown out of the water? It's coaching matters, and how you develop these kids matter. And I think a lot of UCLA fans I've heard online that have opinions, they're a little disgruntled. Hey, these aren't the 4-star guys. We wanted the 5-star guys. Give me development every day over stars. And if we're good enough, that we think we can be good enough, we are going to mesh the development with those high caliber stars in a place like LA. And, You mentioned Casey Wasserman, man. I think, I was talking earlier this week. I'm like, let's see it. You guys want to bring out the money? Let's see it. 29 commitments. These guys aren't coming here for free. It's very, very impressive what Casey has done, putting his money and his nuts on the table for UCLA football.
No question. And Thriller, the one thing I'll say, look, I don't think folks realize what we're seeing in college football right now with some of these teams coming out of nowhere. I mean, you hear about the Campbell, the billionaire oil guy from Texas Tech, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's basically bankrolled a huge piece on him on ESPN, basically bankrolling the whole Texas Tech football program. And, if you've got that mega donor that really, really cares, they do two things. One is they can write checks like it's nobody's business. And you kind of need a billionaire, because if you're worth billions of dollars, you're making tens of millions of dollars every year in passive income. So writing a $10, $20, $30 million check for these guys is not a huge
tax
deal.
Write-off. Yeah.
It's a tax write-off for these guys, number one. But number two is it makes other people want to join in on the party and say, oh, if someone as credible in terms of this successful businessman, businesswoman, whoever it may be, believes in this, there's got to be something there for me to believe in it as well. And you get more of a donor base altogether. And so you're seeing, obviously you see it with Phil Knight in Oregon. Last night's schedule, aside, last night's result aside, you got Phil Knight at Oregon, you got Campbell at Texas Tech, you got Mark Cuban at Indiana. The list rolls on. And think about it, Thriller. Indiana had basically one top 25 finish in 40 years. And they are 26-2 the last 2 years. They won 9 games the previous 3 years combined. They were 3-9 the year before Cignetti got there, just 2 years ago. Sound familiar? That was our record this year. If this thing can happen for Indiana, a school that has much less of a football history than UCLA does, you can certainly bet that it can happen for UCLA. So this is a huge opportunity here. We're finally getting that alignment. The donor base is galvanizing. It took our donor base a while to legitimize NIL in their minds, to think about, hey, the future is here to stay. And they were a little resistant to it. And I think now everyone's starting to understand, look, like it or not, it's here to stay. And now we have to sort of work with the rules that we have in place, where the chessboard is moving forward. So this is just such an exciting time right now. Thriller, just an absolute crushing these last few days, 29 commits in total, 5 on defense. Your thoughts on the latest offensive guys?
Yeah, and I'll just conclude the defensive, guys that we got. We got a couple more defensive backs as well. So we got, Osiris Gilbert coming from UConn. He played a lot as a redshirt freshman this year, has 3 years of eligibility, 21 tackles, 7 pass breakups, and 1 interception. Oh, by the way, playing under Jim Mora, former UCLA coach at UConn. And then Jace McMillan just kind of continuing that winning program. Who won the, FCS national championship? Was Montana State.
Yes, sir.
Bring these guys in. Winners will find a way to win wherever they're at, and that is key. It's very cool to see what Chesney is doing as a strategy. He's looking for a guy with either a lot of eligibility or from a winning program that can come in and contribute immediately. And they've nailed it in the early part. So secondary, I feel like very comfortable with that. Do you think that's a position group we can kind of check off, unless if there's a guy we can't pass up? Because Scooter Jackson returning, you got the 2 safeties now, with Johnson and the Iowa State kid. I'm blanking. DeShaun James is a great safety as well. So, I mean, you got kind of that all figured out with Cole Martin coming back and then some of these dudes also coming in as well. It's very encouraging. So let's move to the offensive side of the ball. Offensive line is a big, big deal, and it hurt this week. One of the non-commitments that hurt us was Joseph Simmons going to Auburn. Like, that was the guy that we talked about in the early episodes, 1,200 snaps. We still need that left tackle, but I really like what they did in the recruiting game. Carter Sweezy coming in after a 23-game starter for James Madison. He's appeared in 35 games, was all-conference Sun Belt. Just another guy the coaching staff trusts and, clearly had success there in leading the Sun Belt in rushing, pass protection. He is very, very solid, 6'2", 315 pounds. Another interior offensive lineman there that you really like. And then, I mean, this is Chip Kelly's wet dream right here. We got another, books and ball type of guy, Derek Osman, coming from Harvard. O-lineman, 6'4", 305 pounds. 31 starts. He's played a lot of football. This is kind of that Cignetti model where it's like, I want production over potential. This guy wasn't sitting on the bench. He was doing everything he could, made all Ivy League honors, can come in and play and knows what he's capable of doing. So you got a couple great offensive linemen, and man, we got a new quarterback. We got some tight ends. I mean, let's start with Ty Diefenbach, a Calabasas native. You see Cal Poly and you're kind of like, I don't know. Turn on the film with this kid. It wasn't always pretty. 9 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, sub 60% completion rate. But boy, if he can hone in those tools, he's 6'6", 220, a legit dual threat quarterback. Came from Pittsburgh originally too, University of Pittsburgh. So he's played at the big time college football level. Diefenbach with better coaching could be a real impact player down the line. I think it was like a really good job by the front office to identify this kid, bring him in, and at least take him as a flyer, a project. You're always going to take a chance on a quarterback that has high upside, given how important that position is in college football. And then, we got a couple tight ends. We got Stevie Amar. We got the Kansas State tight end Lofton coming as well. Stevie Amar coming from Boston College. And I mean, what's a common thing with UCLA football? Oaks Christian guys knock it out of the freaking park for UCLA football. Zach Charbonnet, Carson Schlesinger. I'm hoping Stevie Amar is going to be that third guy in rhythm with those two guys. And then Lofton, I mean, just a guy that came from a Big 12 program, touchdowns to his name, really good receiving element for him as well as Amar Jr. Because we had, the blocking tight end that committed here from James Madison. So just to have those two, it's fantastic stuff, man. And it's really awesome to see this offensive group. I'm going to kind of stop with those guys before I go into the wideouts we got. That was incredible. But Madman, give me your thoughts, because it's almost overwhelming. There's too many guys to talk about. It's the greatest thing in the world at the same time.
No, Thriller, it really is. And I think we're starting to see the pieces come together here, right? And I think it is overwhelming. There's no question about it. And you're seeing it coming from all different directions. But I also think there's sort of a method to the madness here, right, with Chesney. He's going on, if you think about the order in which these commits are coming in, we got a lot of flurry early with some of the offensive guys. Then it sort of popped back over to defense. Now it's popped back over to offense. But if you really look at it thematically, Thriller, they're working inside out, right? Like, think about it when you think about some of the offensive linemen that we've gotten here these first few days. A lot of guards, a lot of interior offensive linemen. When you think about the D-line position, a lot of interior defensive linemen. We've got the linebackers. We've got the secondary. Now, to your point, we've got the blocking tight ends. Now, to your point, how do we sort of fortify the tackles and the edges? And so I think that's what I'm expecting to see here these next couple of days. But again, I mean, we're just going to keep hitting that drum. These themes just keep emerging, right? Guys that have played for a number of years, guys that have, again, like you said, production over potential. Second is guys from winning programs, winning situations. And third is guys that have done all of those things with more than just 1 year of eligibility left. You're going to have some guys that do have 1 year of eligibility left, but how do you get that continuity? So it's production, it's pedigree, it's continuity. Those are really the three pillars. I think those are the common themes that I'm seeing of how Chesney's building out this roster. There's a total method to the madness. I still think the biggest splashes are to come, as crazy as that sounds, particularly when you think about Sahir West, when you think about the guys that we're getting in the, on the edge of the offensive line. We're sitting at number 12 right now, and the best is yet to come. I really think this is going to be a top 5 transfer portal class when it's all said and done. And I think these guys are coming in. It's totally fresh, Thriller. This is going to be a totally different team because you're seeing the guys that have also exited, right? I mean, we lose Keanu. Keanu's now also at Penn State. We lose guys, your Jaden Marshalls. We lose guys that we really cared very deeply about, the Jameer Benjamins, guys that, have been in this program the last couple of years. This is a total overhaul of this roster. It's a cultural overhaul. It is a roster overhaul. It's an operational overhaul. And so we're going to be seeing a drastically different UCLA team on the field next year. And look, for all that we're talking about these transfer portal kids, it was a little light in recruiting. for the class of 2026. So we got that 25 class. We've got some guys now that can come in and fill in the gaps as well. But I expect, Thriller, at least another 10 to 12 players to come. I think this flurry is going to exist here into this upcoming week, and I'm really excited. I think the fans got to think about this inside out, where sort of the interior is coming together. Now some playmakers on the outside from a line perspective. Tackles from an offensive line, edges from a defensive line. But Thriller, I think the craziest madness has been a wide receiver, don't you think, of what is happening
unbelievable here? I mean, we had 4 in a day when you were down in San Diego with Aiden Mizell kind of highlighting that group and Leland Smith. Mizell coming from University of Florida. Smith, I mean, you look at the size of that guy, 6'4", 220, and the fluidity of his body. They posted a clip where he one-handed a touchdown in the end zone. And you're just thinking to yourself, if this guy could just get some, exceptional coaching at the P4 level, like what is the ceiling on this guy? Totally. So we got Landon Ellis, Samaj Morgan coming from Michigan. We won the national championship back in 2024. And then you look at what they just did literally today. I mean, Marcus Harris. Yep. We want to strengthen that modern day pipeline. It's been a USC kind of sure shot for as long as we can remember. Harris, 6'1", 190. I mean, this guy was offered by the who's who in college football. Your Georgias, your Texases, your Alabamas. He chose to go to Washington. It didn't necessarily work out there, but bringing him back to UCLA, what another talented option you could add to this receiving core. And then, I mean, Brian Rowe coming from South Carolina. I mean, this kid is from North Carolina, originally Gamecock, got some early time. He was a high caliber 4-star player out there. I mean, it's very, very impressive what they're doing. And I think, to me, the only positions you could cross off, unless if you get like a Cam Coleman or one of these big names, wide receiver and defensive back feel very set. I mean, 6 wide receivers is a lot for a recruiting class coming out of high school, let alone 6 guys that all expect to play next year with eligibility. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that goes. But I mean, I'm floored with the job the coaching staff has done, because it seems like they've put months of work into this when, relatively speaking, they've only had a couple weeks to gather these commitments for this class. How impressed are you with the recruiting class and like the job that this coaching staff is doing? And like you said, 10 to 12 more commits may be out there for UCLA when it's all said and done.
Thriller, it's remarkable. And I think it was the situation that we were hoping for. When you get a guy like Chesney, and this is what we were talking about, offline and online. I think we wanted to do this the right way, because at UCLA, we do things the right way. Look at some of the situations that are going on externally in the country of transitions of head coaches to other programs. I mean, obviously, Lane Kiffin, there's a ton there, but so many other circumstances as well. We wanted Chesney to finish things out at James Madison because that was the right thing to do. James Madison has been such a phenomenal program. And, we wanted that handoff to be clean. And those players from James Madison who are now UCLA Bruins, so many of them, deserve their season to end the right way with the right continuity and so forth. And we were genuinely rooting for James Madison against Oregon, and we wanted to see it moving forward. When that game didn't, James Madison ultimately fell short to Oregon, you and I both turned around and we were both disappointed, but we said, you know what, now there's an opportunity here for Bob Chesney to be full-time UCLA, perhaps earlier than if James Madison would have advanced. And I think that was going to have a very positive impact on setting up the chessboard, setting up the war room for what was to come from a transfer portal situation. I think that's what you're seeing. Chesney was very fast in terms of putting this staff together. It is a pro-style front office. I mean, when you look at some of the titles, not just of his direct staff, but when you talk about director of player personnel, director of recruiting, you talk about the insight side of the house as well. This is finally looking like a modern college football powerhouse type of front office from an organizational structure perspective. And that's what we were hoping for. With his energy, with his exuberance, look, I think that's why Adam Peters was so high on this guy coming in, number one. And then number two, Thriller, to your other point about which rooms feel very secure, I completely agree with you. When you think about the secondary, you think about the wide receivers. And what I love about the wide receiver room, Thriller, is it really feels like it's 2 types of receivers in this Dean Kennedy system. you're looking for those, lower to the ground, speedsters and guys that are either pure slot guys or just absolute burners, right? Like when you think about Aiden Mazzell from Florida, when you think about Samaj Morgan from Michigan, both these guys are 4-star guys from decorated blue blood programs, both kind of a similar size, right? Really, you're looking 5'11", 175, 6 feet,
Brian
190.
Well.
You're sort of looking at guys that are burners that you want to be able to blow the top off of the defense. Samaj Morgan is super talented. It just didn't work out at Michigan. We're starting to understand why, because of what was going on in Michigan the last few years. I think Samaj Morgan, in the right situation, can absolutely blow up, as can Aiden Mazzell. And then you look at Leland Smith, and then you look at Landon Ellis, Thriller. You're now talking about these big, long receivers. And so you're seeing it. You're seeing it. Big possession guys, those guys that are going to go across the middle for you for 15, 18 yards and have that massive catch radius, those inside slants in the red zone, those tough yards. And what are you seeing, right? In terms of this offensive system, I think there is an emphasis. We're going to hit the middle of the field in terms of inside slants with receivers, in terms of tight end play, and then we're going to hit you deep. That, I think, is the philosophy here that Dean Kennedy really wants. You kind of saw it in that James Madison game against Oregon as well. I think there's going to be a lot of middle of the field and a lot of hitting you deep. And again, to me, short of Sahir West, you know who I think is the greatest get in the transfer portal so far? It's Nico Iamaleava, because we're going to get the actual Nico in 2026. The version of Nico in 2025 was a shell of himself, given the lack of offensive line, given the lack of real weaponry outside of Gilmore in terms of, deep threat. Turn on that tape of Nico in 2024 and prior. He has an absolute rocket. You saw it against Tennessee. He would air the ball out 65, 70 yards. Nico's going to take a lot of deep shots. It's going to be a very vertical pass game. And when you pepper that with the middle of the field with the wide receiver perspective, it's really going to open up that offense. Where did Nico miss, Thriller? When he was inaccurate this year, where did he miss? He missed high, right? You never saw Nico, throw a ball short to guys. It was always high. Now, that was sort of a product of the lack of protection that he had, but it's also kind of mechanically, there's a natural sort of arch on his ball. And so how do you offset that, right? You got to get in the lab. You got to tighten up the mechanics, but then you also have to line up the personnel accordingly. And so by getting these bigger receivers, he can get away throwing the ball a little bit higher, and it's going to be very successful. Think about, particularly early in the season, Thriller, those balls to Matthews. Remember when Matthews was opener against Utah, the games against New Mexico? It was high. He missed them, and Matthews was 5'7", and sort of we talked about that. So you're now lining up the personnel to Nico. We're going to see Nico just blow up next year, folks. This is going to be an all Big Ten performer. This is going to be a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten next year. Mark my words.
Yeah, and I think we saw a lot of things we liked from Dean Kennedy in terms of calling an offense, when it came to Oregon and watching what they did in the Sun Belt this year. I mean, it's one thing to have this, garage of talent, if you will, with the cars that are coming out for Nico, but it also boils down to who's calling the plays. Do we have faith in that guy calling the plays? Because I think schematically, as we talked about at the top, development and schematics matter more than talent. And if you combine both of those, you have a recipe for success moving forward. I've got complete faith in Kennedy. That trick play we did where Leland Ellis, a future Bruin, caught that pass on a reverse play. It was unbelievable to watch that. And I think most people came away from that James Madison game going, hey, some of the stuff they tried didn't work, but from a play calling standpoint, I saw what they were trying to do. And I think it's going to really benefit them in the long term when they come down to UCLA. So it's really exciting. And you talked about the front office, man. The front office is so crucial because to be serious, to be a serious football program in today's environment where pay is on the table, you're going to have to take it seriously. You're going to have to run it like a professional organization. We've got directors of scouting now. We've got guys that deal with high school. We got guys that deal with the transfer portal. Derek Ray and this staff, and spoiler alert, guys, we may have a guy from this staff come on Monday. We are working it out as we speak. I haven't even told you this, madman. We've been DMing with some people that could come on from this UCLA staff. But lo and behold, just the effort they are putting in, because it feels like they've been here for 2 years, let alone 2.5 weeks with what they're conducting out here. And the results are showing. If you're a results person, 29 commits in a week is ridiculous any which way you spin it. And like you said, we may not be done. Team to watch out for, too, now that they're eliminated. What team has UCLA feasted on when it comes to getting some of these players? The Oregon Ducks, Roderick Pleasant coming down, Keanu Williams coming down. These are players that, oftentimes Oregon really poaches a lot of talent from Southern California. So keep an eye out for these Ducks coming, and we may be going duck hunting for UCLA when getting these players back here.
No question, Thriller. No, really well said. And I think what's interesting, 49ers Rock is saying it, XOXO is saying it, and just love the engagement from everyone and so grateful as always for all of that. It's the caliber of guy, right? And in years past, if we go back, early DeShaun was DeShaun. It didn't last very long. And then you talk about the 6 years prior with Chip. A lot of the guys that UCLA were getting, we loved the books and ball. We talked about it, Ivy League kids from Vanderbilt, kids from Northwestern, really upper, just the top of the top in terms of academic universities. And it was those types of kids, or it was kids that we were getting where the opportunities that those kids had were in non-Power 4 context. It was G5 schools. It was G5 schools and maybe a couple other fringe Power 4 schools in UCLA, and we were getting it. Now, when you look at the player that we're sort of going after, could be anybody, offense, defense, interior, outside, what have you, look at the types of programs that they're coming from. There's guys from Ohio State. There's guys from, just the very top end of college football that we're identifying, that they're considering. Guys from, all over the country that are looking at UCLA and Michigan and USC and SEC powers. We're really leveled up, over this cycle. And I think that's the other big takeaway. We talk so much about production, pedigree, continuity, but it's also a leveling up. And Chesney is very confident in putting UCLA's name in the hat with the biggest of boys in college football. And you only have that level of confidence in terms of putting your name in the hat when one of two things happens. One is you have had success with your plan, your blueprint in prior stops and in prior jobs, which he has. So he understands exactly what he's looking for. He knows what he can sell and how it can be effective to these players. But number two is you got to feel like you got the checkbook, because you can sort of walk in and talk all the talk that you want and sell schematics and sell the discipline and sell a vision for being part of the foundation of changing UCLA football and really ushering in a new era that this fan base will talk about for decades to come. And as exciting as that is, and as galvanizing as that is, if you don't have the checkbook to back it up, it's just the reality of where we are today. This is now a pro-style sport. This is a professional sport now, like it or not. This is no longer an amateur sport. You have to have the checkbook to back it up. So the fact that Chesney can go in with these big boys, knowing that he's got both of those things, that's what's got to get the fan base so excited about what the art of the possible is, not just in the next few weeks here, but also in the next few years. And again, we have work to do, right? We talked about it. I'd love to see, perhaps one more backer. I think we need a couple more edges. We definitely have more work on the interior defensive line. We have more work on the tackles. There's more to be done here. We're not done by any stretch of the imagination. But if we apply the formula that we've seen over this week to those positions, I think it's just going to be more of an embarrassment of riches that we're going to be getting in the days to come. Your thoughts, Thriller?
Yeah, and everything you said was spot on. The thing that I would chime in is yes, we still got a ways to go, but would you have anticipated a week into the portal that we're about 80% done with our needs when this roster haul was going to be this big? And what it got me thinking is where this program has failed in the past. And you need 4 things to be great in modern college football today. First and foremost, you need the coach. If you don't have the coach, it's never going to work. You also need strong recruiting pipelines to high school and in the transfer portal. And you need a big checkbook, like you said. We need the university to buy it. We need the donors to buy it. So when it came to Chip Kelly, pretty solid offensive coach. I'm willing to stand on that. He never got the defensive right, so it was almost a half point there. Was very good in the transfer portal. I mean, like, we're talking Jake Bobo, Zach Charbonnet, guys, he literally, Liatu Latu, like, let's keep it going. You know what I mean? Was very good in the transfer portal. Couldn't get the high school right. So if one of these guys go down, there's no depth with that field and didn't have the pocketbook. DeShaun didn't have the coaching pedigree or the staff to kind of mask it, but he was a very strong high school, football recruiter. We saw it. And he was pretty good in the transfer portal. I mean, Nico came under DeShaun's tutelage. You got to give him credit, at least for that. Now that we've got Chesney, I feel confident in the coach. I know what we've got going right now in high school and transfer, and the pocketbooks are opening up. This is a recipe for success in Westwood, and it can't happen at a better time for Bruins fans that are demanding success after this past decade and a half of what's been going on for UCLA.
No question about it, Thriller. Really, really well said. You got all four elements lining up now. You got the right coach. And look, it starts, Thriller, I would even add to that, right? I mean, it starts with the leadership. What have we been harping on for, the entirety of this show over the years? It's been more than a decade and a half, Thriller. This has been 25 years of, mediocrity at UCLA. The Mora 3 years, great, lovely, great. Clap, clap, clap. I mean, we still never won a big game in the Mora era. Let's be honest, never beat Stanford, never beat Oregon. We never quite got over the hump with Mora. It was sort of a bubble scenario there, as you and I have talked about so much. But what was the difference in these last 25 years compared to where things were in the 80s and 90s? You had a chancellor that cared about football. Let's just call it what it is. Charles Young would have been, we've heard it from Wayne. I've heard it from so many other people. Would literally, if he could, he would be on the sideline calling plays if he could. He was that invested in the football team. And then after Chancellor Young, we had two great chancellors. I mean, no question about it. Decorated academics, did amazing things for the school in Albert Carnicel and Gene Block, but neither guy really gave a rip about football. Let's just be sort of honest about that. And it showed because UCLA went bargain hunting for coaches, kind of tried to lean too heavily on the alumni network, the Durrells of the world, the New Heisels of the world, what have you. And, it showed in terms of kind of not really sort of putting the emphasis and the resources and the culture and the time and the energy and the effort to be really successful at a time when college football went from being a regional sport to a national sport. So we were at a time when college football required more because in the BCS CFP era, you no longer could just win your conference and go to your sort of prescribed bowl game. It became a playoff system. So you needed to do more because it became a national sport. And at a time when UCLA wanted to do less because the priorities were elsewhere to sort of enhance and elevate the university in other areas in phenomenal ways. Now you've got a chancellor who cares about football, who understands the importance of football to the rest of the university. And that's what's enabled us to get Chesney and his staff. And that's what's enabled us to get the big donors back at the table. And that's what's going to enable us to be able to do some amazing things in terms of high school and transfer portal recruiting. Yeah. So just what an exciting time, Thriller. I mean, this is just the train is going to roll on in a significant way in terms of 2026. Any final thoughts, Thriller, for our fans, for our people before we sign off?
We're not done yet. We still got to reel in the biggest fish of them all in Sahir West. Got some Ohio State players that are considering bringing their talents to Westwood that we got to go all in on. Keep the fan base has been so positive, and it's so awesome to see after, these 25 years of struggling, of people trying to find a way to get UCLA football back on the mountaintop when it comes to West Coast football as a whole. It's a beautiful time right now. There's hope. And when there's hope, like they say in the Shawshank Redemption, anything could potentially happen for UCLA football. So, man, we are keeping the hopes alive for everyone. Let's keep going after these studs in the transfer portal. And like our guy Jerry always says, it's a great day to be alive and be a Bruin.
Great day to be alive and be a Bruin. And fans, thank you so much for all the love and support. We know you have so many opportunities to spend your evenings. It's a Saturday evening, no less. I mean, perhaps the most precious of all evenings socially. So just so incredibly grateful that you want to spend it with us. 2 requests of you. 1, please hit that like and subscribe button as we continue to grow this community. We care so deeply about UCLA and wanting to provide the best possible coverage of all UCLA sports moving forward. And so hit that like and subscribe button because it helps us in immense ways. And number two, we got to pay the bills around here. Hit that sleeper app and download the #1 sleeper app on the market today. Tell them the guys from the LAFB network sent you. Use that promo code UCLA LAFB and get $100 off your match bonus. 100 becomes 200, and you can do all kinds of really interesting things on the app with the real-time stats, real-time chat, one-stop shop, immersive experience. You can have all different types of games, scores, over-unders, different types of lines to be able to play with. So download that #1 sports app, the Sleeper app, and tell them the Madman and Thriller from the LAFB network sent you. Well, Thriller, another one in the books. We said it was going to be fast. It was going to be furious. This is going to be a dynamite period for this UCLA football program. It already has been. And guess what? We're only halfway through. The transfer portal is open from the 2nd through the 16th. It's the 10th. We're just at the midway point. So I imagine, Thriller, a lot more lives in our destiny here these next few days. And we cannot wait to provide all of you with the breaking news as it happens for our beloved Bruins. And like we always say, be loud, be proud, be passionate, Bruins. And until next time, 4's up forever, baby.